The dismissed observer. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Defense Council buzzed with the voices of a dozen alien species, each more convinced of their superiority than the last. Towering Korathi generals gestured with four muscular arms, their blue-scaled faces twisted in perpetual scowls. The ethereal luminary floated above their crystal seats, their bodies shifting between solid and energy states as they spoke in harmonious tones. Insectoid Zephyrians clicked and chittered, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like scattered diamonds. And in the corner, almost forgotten, sat Marcus Chen. He was unremarkable by most standards. Average height, dark hair showing the first threads of gray, wearing a simple Earth-made suit that looked cheap compared to the flowing robes and gleaming armor around him. His only distinguishing feature was his eyes, dark and constantly observing, missing nothing despite appearing half asleep most of the time. "The attacks are becoming more frequent," announced General Thaxer of the Korathi Empire, his voice booming across the chamber. 3 more cargo vessels vanished in the outer rim last week. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing. Admiral Lissara of the Luminary Collective flickered briefly before responding. "Our energy sensors detected massive gravitational distortions before each disappearance. Something is bending space itself as a weapon." The Zephyrian Hive speaker, whose name humans couldn't pronounce, added through rapid clicks translated by the chamber's eye. "Hive analysis indicates unknown technology. Threat level: severe. Recommendation: immediate military response." Marcus had been attending these meetings for 3 months now, ever since Earth was granted observer status in the Council. Not full membership, of course. That was reserved for the advanced species who had conquered star systems while humanity was still figuring out basic agriculture. But observer status meant he could sit quietly and listen while the real powers debated. "What about the pattern analysis I submitted last week?" Marcus asked quietly, raising his hand slightly. The chamber fell silent for a moment before General Thaxer's laugh boomed across the room. "The human thinks he sees patterns where our greatest minds see chaos." Other aliens joined in the laughter. "Tell me, little Earth dweller, what great wisdom does your species offer? You who only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago." Marcus didn't react to the mockery. He'd expected it. The disappearances follow a specific route through the galaxy. They're not random attacks. Someone is systematically targeting supply lines that connect to the Androvar sector. Androvar. Admiral Lissara's form solidified slightly, showing interest despite herself. "That sector has been empty for 1,000 years. "Exactly," Marcus continued, standing slowly. He activated a small device, and a holographic display appeared showing the galaxy with red dots marking each attack. Every missing ship was carrying specific materials: rare metals, quantum processors, antimatter containment units. Someone is gathering resources for a major construction project. The Zephyrian Hive speaker clicked dismissively. "Human speculation without data foundation. Irrelevant conjecture." "Is it?" Marcus asked. He pressed another button, and the display showed shipping manifests. "I've cross-referenced every cargo list. The missing materials could build a fleet of at least 200 ships, possibly more." General Thaxer stood, his massive frame casting a shadow over Marcus. "Even if your wild theory is correct, so what? The Korathi Imperial fleet alone has over 10,000 vessels. No hidden enemy could threaten the combined might of the Council." "Unless they know something we don't," Marcus replied. "Unless they've been watching us, learning our tactics, preparing for exactly this kind of response." The chamber erupted in indignant roars and chittering. How dare this primitive human suggest that their military might could be insufficient? How dare he imply that some unknown enemy could outwit the greatest strategic minds in the galaxy? Admiral Lissara's voice cut through the noise like a blade of pure light. "Human Chen, what exactly are you suggesting we do?" Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of creatures who saw him as little more than an uplifted ape. "I'm suggesting we prepare for the possibility that we're facing something we've never encountered before. something that doesn't follow our rules or respect our power. Preposterous, roared General Thaxter. The Korathi have fought wars across 100 star systems. The Luminary have existed since before your son was born. The Zephyrian Hive has calculations that predict every possible military scenario. What could some unknown enemy possibly know that we do not? Marcus gathered his materials quietly. He tried to warn them. That was all Earth had asked him to do. I hope you're right, General. I truly do. As he walked toward the exit, Admiral Lazara called after him. Chen, what would your species do in this situation? Marcus paused at the doorway without turning around. We'd listen to the quiet voice in the corner instead of assuming we know everything. He left the chamber as the aliens behind him returned to their loud debates and confident declarations. 3 days later, the Korathi lost their first battle fleet. Admiral Corvin had been patrolling the outer rim with 200 ships when they encountered the enemy. The transmission that reached the Defense Council was brief and terrifying. Strange vessels had appeared from nowhere, sleek and black, moving in ways that defied physics. They fired weapons that turned the fabric of space itself into a trap, creating pockets of twisted gravity that crushed entire ships in seconds. Impossible. General Thaxter raged as he watched the battle recordings. Korathi shields can withstand anything. Our armor is forged from stellar cores. But the footage showed Korathi dreadnoughts crumpling like paper, their massive cannons useless against enemies that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. The attackers moved like shadows, coordinated perfectly, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be at any moment. The Luminary fared no better. Their energy-based technology simply didn't work against these new enemies. Their beautiful lightships flickered and died, their energy forms unable to maintain cohesion when space itself turned hostile around them. The Zephyrian Hive sent their swarm fleets, thousands of small, fast ships guided by collective intelligence. The attackers destroyed them systematically, as if they had studied Zephyrian tactics for centuries and prepared specific counters for every maneuver. Within 2 weeks, the galaxy's 3 greatest military powers had lost over half their fleets. The enemy, now calling themselves the Void Hunters, controlled vast swaths of space and were advancing toward the core systems where billions of civilians lived in terror. Marcus sat in the same corner of the Defense Council chamber, watching chaos unfold around him. Alien leaders who had been confident and dismissive now shouted at each other in panic. Plans were made and discarded in minutes. Ancient alliances crumbled as each species blamed the others for the disaster. We need the Titan fleet, General Thaxter demanded, referring to the Council's ultimate weapon, ships the size of moons armed with planet-killing weapons. The Titans are too slow, Admiral Lazara protested, her form flickering wildly with distress. These Void Hunters will destroy them before they can fire a shot. Then what do you suggest? The Zephyrian Hive speaker clicked frantically. Hive calculations show 97% probability of total defeat with current resources. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in their recorded history, the great alien powers had no answer. Marcus cleared his throat quietly. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the desperate silence. Oh, now the human wants to speak, General Thaxter said bitterly. What wisdom does Earth offer us now that we face extinction? Marcus stood slowly, his calm demeanor unchanged despite the chaos around him. I'd like to make a proposal. Speak quickly, Admiral Lazara urged. We have very little time. Marcus activated his device again, but this time the display showed something different. Instead of attack patterns and cargo manifests, it showed a detailed map of human space, including regions that had never been revealed to the galactic community. For the past 50 years, Marcus began, while you've seen us as primitive newcomers barely worthy of observer status, humanity has been preparing. The aliens stared at the display in shock. What they saw was impossible. The human territory they knew about was tiny, just a few dozen systems around Earth. But the map showed human presence in hundreds of systems, connected by a network of hidden stations and defense platforms. Impossible, whispered Admiral Lazara. Our sensors would have detected such expansion. Marcus smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Would they? You never bothered to look closely at human space because you assumed we had nothing worth finding. He pressed another control, and the display zoomed in to show massive orbital platforms, each one bristling with weapons unlike anything in the alien databases. While you were conquering systems and proclaiming your superiority, Marcus continued, we were studying. Every species we encountered, we learned from. Every technology we saw, we adapted and improved. Every military tactic displayed in these very council sessions, we memorized and developed counters for. General Thaxter's forearms trembled with rage. You spied on us. You deceived the council. We observed, Marcus corrected calmly, just like I've been observing for 3 months. Just like I observed the patterns in the Void Hunter attacks that you all ignored. He activated another control, and the display showed real-time positions of human fleets, dozens of ships moving through space with perfect coordination. The Void Hunters have been watching you for years, learning your weaknesses, preparing for this moment. But they made one crucial mistake. Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting each alien's gaze directly. They assumed humanity was as predictable and arrogant as the rest of you. The chamber erupted again, but this time with desperate hope rather than dismissive laughter. You can stop them, Admiral Lazara asked, her voice barely a whisper. We already have, Marcus replied. 3 hours ago, human fleets engaged Void Hunter forces in the Kepler sector. They expected to face the same kind of opposition they'd been defeating for weeks. Instead, they found something they'd never encountered before. He pressed a final control, and the display showed footage from the battle. Human ships moved like dancers, their formation flowing and changing in ways that seemed impossible. When Void Hunter vessels tried to create gravity traps, the human ships simply weren't where the attacks expected them to be. Human weapons, sleek and precise, struck with devastating accuracy at points the enemy hadn't bothered to armor because no other species had ever found those weaknesses. How? The Zephyrian hive speaker clicked in amazement. Marcus looked at the assembled alien leaders who had dismissed humanity for so long. We listened to the quiet voices instead of the loud ones. We prepared for the worst instead of assuming the best. And most importantly, we never forgot that the universe is vast and full of surprises. The battle footage continued, showing Void Hunter ships retreating for the first time since their attacks began. The impossible had happened. The primitive humans had succeeded where the galaxy's greatest powers had failed. What do you want in return? General Thaxter asked quietly, his pride broken but his pragmatism intact. Marcus considered the question carefully. Nothing you haven't already given us, he finally answered. A seat at the table and a chance to be heard. He gathered his materials once more, preparing to leave. The question now is whether you're ready to listen. The human solution. The Defense Council chamber had never been so quiet. For 3 days, alien leaders had barely spoken above whispers, still processing the impossible reality that humanity, the species they'd dismissed as primitive newcomers, had achieved what their combined fleets could not. Marcus Chen sat in his usual corner, but now his position felt different. The empty seats around him, which had once seemed like isolation, now felt like space made in respect. The aliens who had mocked him weeks earlier now glanced his way frequently, waiting for him to speak. Admiral Lazara materialized fully, her energy form taking on a more solid appearance than anyone had seen in years. Human Chen, our intelligence reports indicate that Void Hunter forces are regrouping in the Androvar sector, exactly as you predicted. Our combined remaining fleets number less than 3,000 ships. What are their numbers? Marcus activated his personal display device, and holographic projections filled the center of the chamber. Current estimates suggest approximately 800 Void Hunter vessels, but they're different from what you've faced before. The display showed sleek, predatory ships unlike the shadowy phantoms that had terrorized the galaxy. These are their true warships, not the scouting forces you've been fighting. General Thaxter, his forearms now folded in a gesture of attention rather than dismissal, leaned forward. 800 against 3,000. Those odds favor us, even accounting for their superior technology. Do they? Marcus asked quietly. He manipulated the display to show tactical analyses. Your 3,000 ships represent 7 different military doctrines, 12 different communication protocols, and 43 different weapon systems that aren't designed to work together. The Void Hunters operate as a single organism, every ship perfectly coordinated with every other ship. The Zephyrian Hive speaker clicked thoughtfully. Hive acknowledges tactical assessment accuracy. Question. Human strategy proposal. Marcus stood and walked to the center of the chamber, something he'd never done before. For months, he'd spoken from his corner seat, but now the situation demanded his full presence. The Void Hunters have spent years studying your individual species, learning to counter your tactics. But they've made a critical error in their calculations. Which is? Admiral Lizara asked. They've studied you as separate entities, not as a unified force. Marcus gestured to the assembled aliens. Every species here has unique advantages. Korethi ships are nearly indestructible. Luminary vessels can phase through normal space. Zephyrian swarms process tactical data faster than any computer. Separately, these advantages can be countered. Together, they become something the Void Hunters have never encountered. The chamber buzzed with translation programs working overtime as aliens discussed the concept in their native languages. The idea of true cooperation, rather than loose alliance, was revolutionary to species accustomed to competition and hierarchy. And humanity? General Thaxter asked. What unique advantage do humans bring to this unified force? Marcus smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't a tired or resigned expression. We bring the ability to see the whole picture instead of just our part of it. He activated a new display showing fleet formations unlike anything in alien military databases. While you were perfecting your individual strengths, we were learning how to combine different strengths into something greater. The holographic fleet formation was beautiful in its complexity. Korethi heavy cruisers formed a defensive core, while luminary fast attack ships flickered in and out of normal space around them. Zephyrian swarm units moved like clouds of intelligent metal, adapting their formations in real time to support whatever the situation required. And threading through it all were human ships, smaller and less impressive individually, but positioned perfectly to coordinate the entire formation. Impossible, breathed Admiral Lizara. The coordination required would exceed the capabilities of any single command structure. You're right, Marcus agreed. That's why we won't use a single command structure. He pressed another control, and the display showed something even more remarkable. Each species will maintain autonomous command of their own forces, but will link the command systems through human coordination protocols. The Zephyrian Hive speaker's clicking grew rapid and excited. Human proposal suggests tactical mesh network, each node independent but contributing to collective calculation matrix, highly efficient for processing complex multivariable scenarios. General Thaxter looked skeptical. And you trust us to follow human coordination without question? I don't need you to follow without question, Marcus replied. I need you to trust that when your sensors show an optimal tactical solution that seems to favor another species over yours, it's because the optimal solution for everyone together is better than the optimal solution for any one species alone. Over the next 18 hours, the most intensive military preparation in galactic history took place. Human coordination teams worked alongside alien commanders, not giving orders but facilitating communication between species that had never truly cooperated before. The results were extraordinary. Korethi engineers discovered that their shield technology could be modified to protect luminary energy forms during phase transitions. Luminary scientists found ways to enhance Zephyrian computational networks with quantum processing techniques. Zephyrian tacticians calculated optimal formations that maximized every species' advantages, while minimizing their individual weaknesses. And through it all, human coordinators worked tirelessly to ensure that no species felt diminished or dominated by the others. It was diplomacy and military strategy combined in ways that had never been attempted before. When the combined fleet finally assembled in space above the Defense Council's primary station, even the aliens who had participated in its creation were amazed by what they saw. 5,000 ships from a dozen species moved together like a single organism, each unit perfectly positioned to support the others. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly unprecedented. Marcus stood on the bridge of the human coordination vessel, watching status displays that showed real-time data from every ship in the fleet. Admiral Lazara had materialized beside him, her energy form stable and focused. "The Void Hunters are moving," she reported. 800 ships emerging from Androvar space, heading directly for us. "Are they configured as expected?" Marcus asked. "Exactly as your analysis predicted. They're approaching in their standard hunter formation, designed to exploit the individual weaknesses of each species they've encountered." Marcus nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All species, all ships. This is Coordinator Chen. The enemy is approaching using tactics designed to defeat you individually. They expect Korethi ships to charge forward, while luminary vessels attempt flanking maneuvers and Zephyrian swarms try to overwhelm through numbers. They have counters prepared for each of these approaches." He paused, watching as the Void Hunter fleet closed the distance. "Instead, we're going to do something they've never seen before. We're going to fight as one species with the combined advantages of all species." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Void Hunters opened with their signature gravity distortion weapons, expecting to trap individual ships and destroy the fleet piecemeal. Instead, they found their attacks dissipating harmlessly against Korethi defensive formations that had been enhanced by luminary energy matrices and coordinated by Zephyrian tactical calculations. When the Void Hunters adapted and tried to phase their ships through normal space to attack from unexpected angles, they found human sensor networks guiding luminary interceptors to exactly the right positions at exactly the right moments. Every Void Hunter tactic was met, not by a counter-tactic from a single species, but by a coordinated response that drew on the strengths of multiple species simultaneously. "Impossible," transmitted a Void Hunter commander on an open channel, speaking for the first time in any language the galactic community recognized. "You should not be able to coordinate such diverse tactical approaches." Marcus responded personally. "You studied us as separate species. You never considered what we might become together." The tide of battle turned decisively when the combined fleet executed a maneuver that no single species could have accomplished alone. Korethi ships created a defensive wall that absorbed massive amounts of damage, while Zephyrian swarms calculated the exact positions of every Void Hunter vessel. Luminary ships then phased through the defensive wall and emerged inside the enemy formation at coordinates provided by the swarms, their weapons guided by human targeting systems to strike at weaknesses identified through combined sensor data from all species. Within 6 hours, the Void Hunter fleet was broken. Those ships that survived retreated into deep space, their perfectly coordinated formation shattered by an opponent they had never imagined possible. In the aftermath, as the combined fleet regrouped and damage reports came in, the Defense Council chamber was filled with a very different kind of conversation than had ever taken place there before. "Human Chen," General Thaxer said formally, "the Korethi Empire acknowledges that our previous assessment of human capabilities was insufficient." "Luminary Collective concurs," Admiral Lazara added. "We request formal alliance status with humanity and proposal for permanent integration of coordination protocols." The Zephyrian Hive speaker's clicking was calm and measured. "Hive analysis indicates optimal long-term strategy requires fundamental revision of interspecies relationships. Recommendation: establish new cooperative framework with human coordination methodology as foundation." Marcus looked around the chamber at beings who had dismissed humanity as primitive just weeks earlier. Cooperation isn't about one species leading others. It's about recognizing that every perspective has value, even the quiet ones you might not notice at first. He activated his display one final time, showing a new kind of star map. Instead of territories marked by species boundaries, it showed trade routes, communication networks, and defense grids that connected every member world in an intricate web of mutual support. The Void Hunters made the same mistake many of us make, Marcus continued. They assumed that strength comes from dominance, that superiority means isolation, that winning requires others to lose. But the greatest strength comes from recognizing what others can contribute and creating something together that none of us could build alone. General Thaxter's laugh boomed across the chamber, but this time it was warm rather than mocking. So the quiet human in the corner was the wisest voice in the room all along. Marcus smiled and returned to his corner seat, but now it didn't feel like isolation. It felt like the perfect position to observe, to listen, and to help others discover what they could accomplish together. Not the wisest, he replied. Just the one who remembered that sometimes the most important thing you can do is pay attention to what everyone else is saying and help them say it more clearly. The Defense Council voted unanimously to establish the Cooperative Defense Initiative, with human coordination protocols at its foundation and Marcus Chen as its first director. But he insisted on keeping his corner seat, claiming it gave him the best view of everything that mattered. And in the years that followed, when new challenges arose and unknown threats appeared, the galaxy's response was swift and unified, because they had learned the most important lesson of all, that the quiet voice in the corner might just be the one worth listening to most carefully.